Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd begin in terms of Campus Technology 215. In terms of the presentation this morning, it's Trailblazers, and I didn't know how awake everyone was going to be at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they wanted coffee and conversation, so I thought I would get the conversation going actually in the next 15 to 20 minutes to give a little presentation in terms of what I think is going on in terms of emerging technology and campus technology. My name is Rayus Wishin. I am the Director of Digital and Collection Services at Texas State University, which is a large university in Texas, around 40,000 students, and I wanted to overview various technologies here. We're not going to cover everything, but what I thought we would do would be to actually give some grist for discussion and talk about some of the landscape that is going on right now in terms of higher ed. And really, these are trailblazing technologies, so we're really in process here with a lot of these technologies in terms of going forward. I wanted to actually start with my area and a silent revolution that I think is going on with the online library. And really, there's a fascinating kind of collision right now of both content-based databases and software that's occurring. And I wanted to begin by tracing this back, starting with the 90s, and when we exited the model of print books and print journals. By about 1995, we had entered an era where online journals and ebooks were the norms at university. And by the 2000s, well, from anthropology to zoology, there was a database for everything, and the academics preferred their journals and their ebooks online. Around 2000 also, software started to get really good in the cloud. And what happened at that time is cloud-based service in terms of applications started to get really robust. Right now, we're at a time where both cloud-based service and those content databases are synthesizing and colliding and coming together in various interesting ways. Just to sort of spell this out in terms of expenditures, my material budget is approximately $7.2 million at Texas State. $6 million that the library is spending is on online hybrid tools and content databases. Now, when you look at the library picture down at the bottom, you sort of think to yourself, well, that's the library, that's what it looks like. The reality of the situation in terms of, I guess, materialization of that function in terms of yearly acquisitions is that 84% of the budget is being spent on online data pipes that are interconnecting, connecting to various systems, and putting things together. Now, these tools that are really coming out in 2015, and this starts to get to the emerging technologies part of this, are trying to marry really those content-based databases that the libraries are paying millions for, plus software as a service. And there's a sort of a really interesting conversation going on between university IT and various IT departments and the library and digital services saying, hey, is this software? Is it content? It's not books anymore, and yet it's the databases have become so powerful that they're allowing us to manipulate these things that require also support services. So I'm going to go through a couple of these here. Are there any browsing users here? No. So these are fairly new technologies, as you can see. What browsing does is essentially put the entire library content, that $6 million, into iPad or Android Nexus app. So you can access all of your journals just like a Flipboard type of application and flip through your well, Journal of Microbiology to Journal of Anthropology. academics just love this tool, and it's really getting powerful right now in terms of the add-ons and the possibilities for also connecting with the classroom. The second one is called Curriculum Builder, which basically takes the content-based databases that the library is purchasing and places those into a marriage with your learning management system, whether that's Sakai or Blackboard. So essentially, the synthesis that is occurring here has to do with electronic resources on the one hand, and then your robust learning management system. Datazoa does the same thing with data. It's more of in its infancy as a product, but it allows academics to manipulate data from the web in real time, and then also get dynamic updates. Shared Shelf does a similar type of thing with images. So what that is doing is taking your image collection or academics' image collections from, say, nucleotides to art history, and allowing academics to place those into very, very quick digital libraries. And these really are sort of new generation applications that cannot be considered content anymore. These are sort of software marriage applications. 3D printing services. I want to move to a different area and begin with a video here, if I can get it up.
I think when students have ideas and they can sketch it out in a computer or in a notebook and they want to bring it to life, the tools that we have nowadays with 3D printing allows them to do it in a cost-effective way that they couldn't have done in the past. My name is Willie Wong, and I am a designer and creative director here in New York City. I'm also a professor at the School of Visual Arts at Parsons, where I teach courses on tourism design and innovation. For 3 classes, we've had access to a Makerbot Starter Lab, and I almost wish that every student had access so that they can all be creating the prototypes of their ideas. This is the first time I've incorporated 3D printing into my class. I'm really excited about it because I think that the design industry has been talking about light manufacturing and prototyping, and students haven't had access to that type of environment.
I didn't realize it was kind of like icing a cake, like the way the plastic comes out. I thought it was a very efficient and cool way to prototype things.
They can test out and try things. Maybe the type is too small and it breaks apart in reality. And so there needs to be enough equipment for all students to test and to explore. It's not helpful to have one computer in a class of 20 students. They all need to have access to the tools and to use it themselves.
And so I'm not going to show that whole video, but the idea there is that the computer lab, very much from where we know it, is very much also changing. And so we're moving from traditional printers to 3D printers. And where those printers used to be co-located in very specialized labs for the 3D printers, they're moving to much more general locations among the university campus. We're in the process of putting together a couple labs, actually. The MakerBot was one of our choices in terms of putting together a 3D printer service. And what I would say is, anybody here thinking about a 3D printing service or doing one? One person? Okay, well then I've got a couple things to say. So if you are actually thinking about putting in a 3D printer lab or 3D printer services, it's very important to, as well as be thinking about the 3D printer and the hardware and software as technology we think about, it's important to also be thinking about the infrastructure. So things like policy and services are going to be very important to how those labs are going to be run. And it's not going to be as cut and dry in terms of 3D printers as regular printers to actually be printing out, say, models or car engine parts or jewelry for our art and design. There's going to be a human resource infrastructure that's needed there. So what I can recommend here in terms of carrying out a 3D printer lab is one size really does not fit all. And when you're thinking about a 3D printer infrastructure for your campus, and again, this is an emerging technology, I expect this to be coming in right now at our campus. Various departments are clamoring for it. And with regards to that, it's important as a technologist or going into these types of projects to think about an environmental scan. And when you're thinking about an environmental scan, this chart sort of outlines 3D printer quality versus cost. And it's important to sort of do an environmental scan of your campus and go through the departments that already may have 3D printer initiatives and have, you know, taken the bull by the horns or trying to take the action away from campus technology in terms of going off on their own, because in some ways we're behind the curve. We found at Texas State that education, art and design, engineering, and forensic anthropology were all using 3D printers already. And the 3D printers that they were using varied in cost from less than $2,000, as you can imagine, for education, who would be using these 3D printers for teachers or on undergraduate and graduate levels in terms of teacher training, and the teachers taking those printers to their classrooms, to art and design, who have design and artistic purposes, to the STEM disciplines, who have, you know, more robust, I guess, or what you would call, you know, industrial design type of purposes for the 3D printer. And the costs really vary, everywhere from less than $2,000 to upwards of $1 million. And at Texas State, the $1 million printer and $800,000 3D scanner were actually being used by forensic anthropology of all places to print out skulls. And the reason they were printing out skulls was that those skulls, high-resolution skulls, would be used in court cases in terms of forensic evidence to go through their court cases, and also to use as study tools in terms of the discipline. So I really would recommend actually going through that type of scan at your university if you're going into these types of initiatives. Just stepping back here also, academic technology labs. The 3D printer is not the only way that academic technology labs are changing. There's a paradigm shift occurring in terms of the services that students and faculty are asking for and beginning to think about and also press the envelope on. Is anybody doing a maker lab here? No? So again, these are all very emergent technologies, and again, these are ones that I expect to be coming in. So the Maker Lab, the idea there is to be taking non-traditional academic lab computing tools and to be putting them into a space that puts together both physical computing and your traditional coding. So people are doing things like 3D printing. They're also doing things such as physical computing, robotics, and then putting that together. Now, the difference here in terms of, say, disciplinary computing and generalized campus technology type of lab is that this robotics development or 3D printer is not relegated to a single discipline. So this is sort of the unghettoization, if you want to look at it that way, of say, 3D printing or robotics from the computer and engineering folks. Now, the computer engineering, as you can imagine, aren't overly happy. A lot of the other disciplines, though, are very interested in terms of actually marrying their own discipline with these new types of paradigms. And space becomes a very, very interesting type of issue to consider here. So the larger meta to take away is that academic computing and media spaces are very much changing. And I would want to sort of preface that. The photograph on the right is Texas State, which is our first generation sort of learning commons, almost a typical computing lab with non-traditional spaces, but also a lot of computers. So we have 400 computers on the main floor, and the library is really becoming a giant computing lab in some ways. Now, design becomes very important in terms of these newer technologies. And the design is really a sort of a marriage between engineering and architecture. These are very, very creative type of newer spaces that require a lot of thought, both towards putting together the space, but also thinking about how is the technology going to exist in an ecosystem in this space. I want to mention here, in terms of technologists, and this it's very interesting to me, is that a lot of sort of universities are beginning to hire anthropologists to look at not the tribe of some far-off culture, but actually the students in terms of how they're using technology and taking those field notes and giving them to the architects and the engineers to design more effective media spaces. The third slide here is the instant theater, again, which is coming in to labs, believe it or not. And students there are using video, again, academically as a learning tool by faculty, students, and also in terms of project-based visualization. And that sort of leads to the next emerging set of technologies, and that's visualization technologies. Really here we're really confronting wider definitions of computing and digital literacy. The possibilities are really fascinating because we're combining both visualization possibilities with data applications. I'm going to show a video from Hunt Library, which is using a lot of visualization technologies in its labs.
I don't think I've seen anything come along in North Carolina in recent years that people were as excited about. They just kind of feel like, boy, we've got something great here, and we're proud of it.
This is a signature building for us, transformative for the way people think about NC State. The Hunt Library sets a pole out into the future and says we're going to be the leading edge technological university for many, many, many years to come.
The Hunt Library was designed to be an interdisciplinary waypoint, a place that could bring people together from across the university. a technologically rich library, meant to be flexible and to grow and really breathe with technology as it changes.
This is a land-grant university that is practical. We base our curriculum around the real challenges that society faces, whether it's in disciplines like engineering or textiles or agriculture. So NC State is focused on solving real-world problems and using the best technology to do that. And this library reflects that.
This was our goal.
So again, I'm not going to show the whole video, but you get the idea here that there's a spectrum of visualization technologies being shown. Those visualization technologies are also not one way, so simply broadcasting. There were a couple of broadcast videos, but there's also sort of the interactive data manipulation side of things, which brings up real questions in terms of campus technology and what we've been dealing with, and thinking about human resource infrastructures and also other infrastructures that are coming up that are going to be needed to facilitate faculty and facilitate students in terms of moving into these new types of paradigms. Here I highlighted Tableau, which is another product. How many people are familiar here with Tableau? A couple people, so a couple more people here. It's a data visualization technology that really is coming up in terms of the front end of the database, and it's a tool really for faculty and students to be moving through complex data sets and the complexity of data that's being gathered that previously they weren't able to, because the Excel spreadsheet was just not cutting it anymore. I want to move now to faculty research analytics. I know there's been a lot of talk on student analytics, and I'd be happy to entertain that, but I wanted to talk, since this is emerging technologies, I wanted to talk about the less talked about faculty research analytics, which for me is really getting fascinating in terms of what's happening about the black box of the university that we never see. So here are a couple, I guess, visualizations of Texas State University and what the faculty have been up to in terms of publications in the past couple of years. And this is from a tool called Insights. It's Thomson Reuters, and is aggregating multiple databases and mirroring that to the university faculty list. So here we can see on the right, history in the last 5 years at Texas State has sort of, I guess, just basically hit it out of the ballpark in terms of the numbers of papers they have published. Second on the list is ecology, and third on the list is biochemistry and molecular biology. That gives academics and also people interested in the university's reputation a lot of grist in terms of looking under the hood of what's going on in terms of academically in the university. The graphic on the left also shows a very different picture, and I found this fascinating. So while the most papers are being published by history, and they can toot the number of their papers, the most impact in terms of those papers being cited in research citations and those papers being considered important are actually coming out of, well, mostly the hard sciences. And you could see here engineering and technology, clinical and preclinical health, the physical sciences, give you a different view in terms of what are the important departments in the university and what are the important areas. Now, that's one tool to actually be getting a grasp on knowledge management and campus technology. There's also not, and this uses sort of the refereed academic journals and everything that would be considered pure land, the whole cream of the academic enterprise. Plum Analytics, and how many have heard of Plum Analytics here? One person. So it's a newer product that is actually taking non-traditional sources for academic reputation, such as blogs, wikis, Facebook, and tweets, and calculating the faculty member's academic reputation and also the importance of various departments based on non-traditional sort of Web 2.0 analytics. And my take on this is, if you're purchasing or the university is getting into this, it's very important actually not to sort of silo yourself into one application, but actually to think about the various possibilities that there are and putting together these views together. Again, these tools are also very good, these new set of tools, and I'm including another one here called SciVal that basically essentially tells you what universities your university is also collaborating with. And it's a fascinating tool because it highlights all of the co-authored papers and major universities in a grand meta global database where your researchers are working with others. At Texas State, what was a big surprise, what was known to us is our main collaborators are University of Texas at Austin on one side of us, University of Texas at San Antonio, another, and Texas A&M, the other three big universities. What was a complete shock to the administrators, and also sent them, in terms of the purchase order for these tools, very interested in actually increasing this area, were the non-traditional universities. And here it's hard for me to see on the screen, but again, I'll read one of them. Victoria University of Wellington. Would anybody venture to guess where that is? Victoria, Wellington. Did somebody see Australia back there? Yes, Australia. Who would have thought that's the main collaborator? It was a complete surprise to our administrators. The next one is another obscure one called University of Barrie. Can anybody guess where that is? There's a little flag next to it if you can see it, but it's hard to see from here. But it's Italy. Well, that came as a complete shock to the administrators, upper-level administrators at our university, and they also felt, well, this is great for collaboration because this is where the research grants come out of, this is where there's money actually being spent and money being garnered, but also in terms of student-faculty synergies, they're in place there. And this was all through sort of database mining and insight that these new tools are allowing us. With regards to the more specific tools, there's also more specific tools coming up in terms of open source data collaboration on virtual levels. So while those were co-citational papers that were being collaborated on in terms of virtual projects, there's projects occurring right now nationally. Has anybody heard of the Nano Hub? So this is another tool. This is another tool for disciplinary researchers that are interested in, say, obscure, specialized niches. In this case, nanotechnology. Bringing global researchers together virtually to actually publish their data, share their data, and also draw the same and verify conclusions or disprove others' conclusions. So it's a truth table, but also it makes it difficult to fudge your research. Now, with all of that, and this is really part of the whole data revolution and that's occurring right now, and very, very different from our infrastructures in terms of how they're set up. With that, with all of the talk right now with regards to data management repositories, and again, I would put this one on your A list in terms of emerging technologies coming up. And what these repositories do is essentially publish, cite, analyze, and preserve faculty and student, graduate student, research data. Why are they important? They've been around for about 3 years and 3 to 5 years, haven't gained much traction, but in the last couple of years, the major US grant funding agencies, the NSF, NIH, NEH, USDA, have essentially said that if you are interested in taking money from the public trough, and that's most of our academics that are interested in big grants, you also must publicly publish your data. So for any other researchers that may be interested, they need to be seeing this. Well, the researchers, if they're going to be getting grants at your university, need to actually have this in their grant applications. In terms of academic technology, it means that us, as technologists, need to be implementing these software frameworks that enable institutions to host these research data repositories. The one that I'm highlighting, and I thought I'd highlight it because we are in Boston, is Harvard's Dataverse repository. I would say that's one of the 2 top leading ones right now. The other one is a generic product out of Purdue that the NanoHub uses called Hub Zero. They're both customizable, and Purdue's version of Hub Zero is called Per. Now, with all of this talk about I've moved from visualization to learning spaces to software applications to data. And with data and uploading it, the long-term digital and data preservation requirements have become enormous. They're really coming up strong, because as soon as you start implementing these and start playing with the data on any significant ways, you're going to need to actually increase your data capacity. There's various methodologies right now that universities and colleges are scrambling to right now. And they're divided both into commercial sources, and here I'm highlighting Amazon Web Services, where where you're paying to rent something like space in Glacier or S3, and the difference between Glacier and S3 is that Glacier, as you can imagine, once that data is frozen in there, Amazon can take it out, but they're going to charge you for unfreezing that data and giving it back to the university. So if it's long-term data that you don't expect to be used often, Glacier is an okay choice. S3 is instantaneous, but the rental charge is higher. Now, I've been focusing on large data research applications, but we've all got faculty and that have also been around for the past 30 or 40 years. And I'm sure all of you can remember this artifact right next to EC2. What is that? A floppy disk. And so that floppy, and those academics that have put their work on the floppy, some of them have gotten quite important in the last 50 years. And especially since you wouldn't think so, but the technology has been around since the 1980s. Since the 1980s, it's 35 years right now in terms of those floppy disks. The preservation and possibilities for academics who have put that data onto the floppy disks are poor right now. And our national centers that have the capabilities and have kept the drives from the last 30 years you can count them on one hand. At the same time, it's very important to be thinking about actually your academic riches on your university and preserving that data in terms of the academics for future generations. The other way universities are also beginning to do this, if they don't want to be paying the perpetual rental charges to Amazon for their data warehouse or their data repositories, is home-growing their own. In terms of homegrown initiatives, the Texas Advanced Center for Computing has their own data warehouse and long-term data digitization repository that they're charging less for, and there's few state initiatives for this, but they're appearing. On national levels, there's also something called DEEPIN, which is the Digital Preservation Network. And basically it's the same idea in terms of TAC, the Texas Advanced Computing Center, in terms of a data repository, but they've moved the data repository into a network infrastructure. So if one of these floppy disks gets zapped at your repository and you've backed it up at, say, TAC, TAC will have a relationship with a national repository in Ohio and Chronopolis in California, so that the data can stay safe for years to come. Now, with that all, I think we've got all of 5 minutes. I'll open it up to questions or comments or talk with regard. I'd be happy to entertain talk about other trailblazing trends. Are there any questions or comments? Well, there definitely are timeline stipulations. It's an excellent question. There definitely are timeline stipulations. Since this is sort of a new area in terms of the government, and especially these are all large grant initiatives with the NEH, NIH, USDA, the timelines are different for every one of the funding agencies. The one thing that is similar is that they want you to actually do your research first, and then in between the published paper and the data, that needs to be publicly published. And the reason that they want it actually in between those lines is because when you publish that paper or their preprint, they want you to actually add a digital object identifier to the paper, so that academics that are reading the paper can actually click the link and go directly to the paper. A great question, by the way. We're running short of time, so I was told that we've got all of these Trailblazers ribbons if people want to pick them up, or maybe I'll, if you see people at the conference, and myself included, feel free to stop me. And I was also told to connect with your colleagues year-round. There's a LinkedIn account, and that's available through Campus Technology, and if people want to take a second to write that link address down, I'll also leave that up there. And I think our 40 minutes is up. I wanted to leave you with a final quote here. Never be afraid to try something new. Remember, amateurs built the Ark, but professionals built the Titanic. And we're really at an amateur stage right now with all of these technologies that I've been outlined, and there's plenty of room for collaboration and setting models right now in terms of many of these applications. Thank you.